So, welcome and good morning, good evening. My name is Joji Sugawara, Vice President of the Health and Global Policy Institute, or HGPI. Thank you for joining us today. Today's event is only provided in English. HGPI is an independent, non-profit, non-partisan health policy think tank based in Tokyo, Japan. We work to promote evidence-based health policy both in Japan and also globally. And also we put the citizens focus for our center to provide policy options, both domestically and internationally. So today's event, the HGPI special seminar, Insight from Harvard Student on Fukushima's Recovery, is co-hosted with the Takemi program in international health at the Harvard TH Chan School of Public Health. We recently began collaborating with the Takemi program to promote international dialogues on health system and public health. HGPI regularly organizes seminars like this to create opportunities for open dialogue on key health policy topics. And as myself, born in Japan, Tohoku, Miyagi Prefecture, and experienced the earthquake back in 2011, I'm very, very honored to have this opportunity working as HGPI staff, collaborating with the Harvard student. Before we begin, I would like to mention that we will have a panel discussion, more like a Q&A, at the end of today's program. So please feel free to submit your questions at any time using the chat function. And don't forget to upvote using the like button, the questions you would like to be addressed by the speakers later on. Additionally, for today's event, we do not have a specific handouts that downloadable for the audience. But if there are some additional materials, we would like to follow up via emails for those who registered to the event. A recording will be made available at a later date, and we will notify everyone through our email newsletter. And also for those who registered, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing our newsletter as well. So now let's begin with the opening remarks. It is my great pleasure to first invite Professor Aya Goto from the Harvard TH Chan School of Public Health, and followed by Mr. Masahito Hiratake-san, Director of the Mitsubishi Corporation Digital Innovation Center and board member of the Takeda Healthcare Foundation. Professor Goto, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for opening the seminar. Let me share my slides. Okay, so first of all, thank you for attending this seminar so early in the morning in Japan to hear what our students have learned in Fukushima. I am Aya Goto, the main instructor of the course and director of the Takemi program. First of all, I would like to thank HGPI for providing this wonderful opportunity to introduce the Fukushima course. I would also like to thank the host institutes, including Fukushima Medical University, Takeda Healthcare Foundation, and Mitsubishi Corporation, and many other collaborators of the course. Mr. Hiratake and I will take the first 10 to 15 minutes to explain the course overview. First of all, let me explain the name of the course. In 2011, I was living in Fukushima. We had earthquakes, tsunami, and the nuclear power plant explosion. Personally, I was not badly affected, but it is still not easy for me to remember what we went through. But at the same time, I believe it is our mission to pass on the lessons we learned to the next generation while recovering from the disaster. This course is called the Fukushima field trip course. I did not call it Japan field trip course with the strong intention of focusing on the recovery in Fukushima. So the main objectives of the course are first, to introduce students to the lived experiences and build back better recovery efforts in Fukushima. And second, to let students propose strategies for the future. And this is what you are hearing today. The course preparation started with 2 preparatory sessions in Boston and online. From this stage, the students were divided into 3 groups. These were health monitoring, risk communication, and environmental data contamination to learn about cross-cutting issues related to people's body, mind, and environment. And during the course in the first 1 week in Fukushima City, they mostly learned what happened in the past and what are the remaining issues. In the second week, they looked more into the future. The third week was devoted to summarizing and presenting. Let me explain about the first week. Students met with Fukushima Medical University president and the city mayor. They took lectures from various stakeholders related to the nuclear disaster, including city staff, a school principal, and the NPO leader. After learning the basics, they went to visit the nuclear power plant, a disaster museum, and the Fukushima Health Management Survey Office. We also had fun cultural learning through Japanese cooking, tea, art, and music events. So this was in Fukushima City. Now let's move to the second week in Aizu. Here, Hiratake-san from the Mitsubishi Corporation will explain. Hiratake-san, please.
Yeah, but Goto Sensei, would you please conclude your session? And after that, let me make explanation more detail about the second week parts. Is it okay for you?
Sure, that's no problem. So Hiratake-san will explain about the second week in detail later. So let me skip the part and move on to the third week. After completing 2 weeks, you will learn how rich the learning was, both in Fukushima City and also in Aizu. The students gave final presentations in the third week to health professionals and course collaborators at Fukushima Medical University. They also explained about the course at Japan Medical Association. And today, students are presenting a slightly shorter version of what they talked about in Fukushima. Now, going back to Aizu, looking into the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Goto. And good morning, everyone. I'm Masahito Hiratake, the program organizer for second week of Aizu parts of Harvard Fukushima program with Professor Goto, titled Beyond Recovery Toward Social System Innovation for Future from Aizu Area as Japanese Best Practice. As part of the recovery from the Great East Japan earthquake, Aizu Wakamatsu City has been working on smart city and digital transformation projects since 2011. We also established Mitsubishi Corporation Digital Innovation Center in Aizu 6 years ago to create a new business model for Japan's future development from local region beyond reconstruction efforts. In Aizu, we aim to think about various things firsthand, especially through interaction with people in the local community and through facing nature. We also aim to establish a vision for the future and to draw a process of social system innovation using a backcasting approach from the future. In the exchange with local community members, we visited Junior and High School of Aizu Wakamatsu, Zaberio School observed geophysics classes and held roundtable discussion between junior and senior high school students and Harvard students. The Zabelio student asked questions such as why they wanted to study at Harvard, what has changed since they actually became Harvard students, and what kind of leaders should be in charge of creating the future. Students are very much impressed by the detailed answer to these questions. My middle school son's impression was his image of elite was a bit cold and scary, but that image has just changed dramatically. Harvard students are very friendly, kind, and approachable. He felt that they had ability, will, and goodwill for future innovation. We also did a homestay with a view to interacting with the citizens. The fieldwork in a home very well received by both the citizens and the students. The Harvard School of Public Health and Takeda Healthcare Foundation and the Mitsubishi Corporation collaborated to promote the ICE program. A full-day meeting was held at Takeda General Hospital, featuring lecture and discussion on healthcare issues in the region and advanced approaches to solving them, as well as an interim presentation for the Harvard Fukushima program. Mitsubishi Corporation Day and Planetary Health Forum on Social System Innovation were held at the AICT, home of Mitsubishi Corporation Digital Innovation Center, under the general theme of Beyond Reconstruction Toward Social System Innovation for Future. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to share a few details about social system innovation, which we repeatedly discussed with Harvard students with the aim of deepening the understanding in today's debriefing sessions. Let me briefly explain what I mean by social system innovation. It involves creating systems that provide essential services for daily life, such as transportation, energy, like electricity and gas, as well as healthcare, by one, tailoring them not only to individual needs, but also to the needs of community. Second, optimizing the timing of, for example, delivery. And third, integrating and reconfiguring these services to deliver them as unified and combining solutions. Achieving this requires the evolution of key systems that make up the broader social infrastructure, such as regional transportation, energy, and healthcare system. Instead of providing services siloed by industry, it's essential to combine them across sectors to create smarter, integrated services and evolve the associated business models. This approach also calls for business models that generate revenue not only local but also larger scale, combining profitable venture or profitable business model with those that incur cost. It's important to encourage the participation of local residents in the services creation and delivery process to reduce costs, as well as to distribute costs across multiple services. In essence, the core of this concept lies in creating a new business model that addresses these challenges. Looking at the long term, the global population is expected to decline rapidly after year 2100. Japan is projected to lead this trend, with its population shrinking from 124 million to just 51 million. In the face of such population decline, the key question becomes how region can build self-sustaining social system. By adopting decentralized system and fostering future support, regions can address labor shortage, reduce costs, and develop a mechanism to collaborate on a broader scale, creating global scalable revenue streams. This, I believe, is the path to ensuring the sustainability of local communities. In today's society, the forms that goods and services take are evolving rapidly. Alongside this, new concepts such as prosumer are emerging, where consumers are no longer just recipients of services, but also become active producers themselves. In line with this shift, region-driven transformation models that combining local healthcare, mobility, and energy system are expected to form the core of social system innovation. Here in Aizu, pioneering efforts to transform social system, including the development of community-based data integration platforms. Additionally, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought significant challenges to light, both internationally and within Japan, regarding how we should redefine and approach health and well-being. In response to these challenges, the perspective of planetary health has become a crucial key to understanding the interaction between the environment and human health in new ways. By leveraging the concept of planetary health, today's theme invites us to consider how diverse stakeholders spanning politics, economics, and society can collaborate, mobilizing policies, science and technology, and local community to drive social system innovations. I like to describe the Planetary Health Forum at Aizu with Harvard students that we held in light of these events. A keynote address on planetary health, focusing on interrelationship between the health of global environment and human health, was given by Professor Emeritus of Harvard University, Dr. Michael Reich, University of Tokyo, of the Dr. Watanabe. In addition to healthcare with Takeda General Hospital and mobility with Honda, we also presentation with discussion on the relationship between planetary health and business from experts in traditional industries such as miso with Aizu Temple, beekeeping, Matsumoto Yohojo Sohonjo, and lacquer crafts Artemeister Hoshi, Sino-Japanese traditional medicine with Fukushima Medical University, as well as local government, such as Mayor of Bandai Town, and the legal profession with Morihama Law Firms. Linking environmental health to human health shows the possibility of making environmental action more personal in discussion, such as taxonomy for green economic activities. The forum was also seen as a new initiative that showed how learning from traditional industries with a long history, the changing role of local government, immigration, and other diverse areas can be linked to business contacts. It was very well received by Harvard and citizens. We believe it is important to build interdisciplinary core model that uses the vision of planetary health that links environmental health and links green transformation investment with healthcare transformation investments from a local perspective, and to explore its scaling model from a global perspective for creating new industries. Lastly, I like to share with you two things I felt after organizing Harvard Fukushima program and the Planetary Health Forum. First, economic activity with a concept and vision will be the choice from now on. We need to explore a trend in philosophy and vision and become a complex value-creating organization in the eyes of investor. We deepened the discussion with stakeholders on the commercialization of planetary health and introduced a new initiative from Aizu. Second, by establishing a vision such as planetary health, we aim to solve complex problems in local community and promote business development through deep collaboration with a variety of experts. The necessary participant with traditional industries, general hospital, and local government in Fukushima have been strengthened to promote the project. Finally, we are planning to continue the program next year in Fukushima, so we hope those who are watching today will come to Aizu and Fukushima next January to participate in Planetary Health Forum or other program and experience in it with us. Thank you very much for our presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Goto and Mr. Hiratake, for your remarks and the overview of the course and also a future kind of vision about the program. So let me move into next program. So we have three groups, as Professor Goto Sensei said. Each group has allocated 15 minutes to share their findings. And our first group will be presenting on mental health monitoring in Fukushima, a proposal for improving survey method. The speakers are Nihal Laman, Chelsea Wong, and Richard Cowell. Please turn on your video and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me just share the presentation real fast.
And for audience, if you have any questions, please use Q&A function so you can post any question anytime. Over to Nihal.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the seminar today. We're really excited to share what we did and learned about in Fukushima this past winter. So my name is Nihal Rahman. I'm a first-year PhD student in population health at Harvard School of Public Health.
My name is Chelsea. I am a Master of Education candidate at the Harvard Graduate School of Education doing human development.
And I'm Richard Cowell. I'm a Master of Public Health student in Global Health.
And our two other group members, Mateo and Chen, could not be here with us today, but they also were working with us on health monitoring in Fukushima. So when we got to Fukushima, we were learning about the Fukushima Health Management Survey. And basically what this was a very comprehensive assessment of health in the prefecture following the 2011 triple disaster. There are multiple components to the survey. As you can see, they're all listed here, all targeting different aspects of mental health, of health generally, but our group want to focus in specifically on the mental health and lifestyle survey within the broader package of instruments. So our big research question was how can we adapt the mental health and lifestyle survey to enhance its utility, accessibility, and relevance within the prefecture? This was informed by a kind of greater conversations we had in the prefecture about how while radiation and the associated health outcomes may not be as present in modern day, there are long-lasting implications, primarily with mental health, both direct mental health effects of being maybe exposed to radiation or living in a place that experienced disaster, but also secondhand mental health from the associations, the stigma from being in Fukushima. So we kind of want to target those aspects. To do so, we have 3 recommendations that we'll share with you all today: instrument review, mixed methods approach, and improved data systems. And the goals of these 2 were to future-proof the survey and to reduce burden, both for the administrators and then the residents of Fukushima. So starting with the first presentation of the first component, it's the instrument review. This has 2 components to it. We'll be expanding the inclusion and then also recommending to have greater community involvement. Currently, the survey was administered to those who were living in the covered areas that were designated as evacuation zones, but this does not cover the entire prefecture generally. So we thought that some of the health outcomes we were interested in, such as anxiety, depression, and other mental health outcomes, they are not just directly targeted or based in the evacuation zones. These are issues that affect people across the prefecture, and we thought to have those comprehensive survey available, it would cover the entire prefecture. So the first proposal is to broaden the inclusion criteria within Fukushima Prefecture to gain deeper insights into residents' health trends and enhance preparedness for potential future crises. Then not only will this allow us to know how the residents are doing right now in regard to the previous disaster, but if there are to be future things that come up or future courses of action to be taken, this can help really inform that.
Yes. As a team, we have a really strong priority for incorporating the community's voices when adapting the survey. So as a team, we propose to conduct focus groups with specifically identified vulnerable groups, such as internally displaced populations, school-age children and youth, foreign residents and non-Japanese speakers, elderly populations, workers in nuclear facilities, and women and family. So we also drew inspiration from an academic article written by Kelly and colleagues, whose survey development process is grounded in the principles of a framework called community-based participatory research. So this is a 5-step method, and we propose a circular and iterative approach that allows for ongoing engagement, continual review, and refinement, ensuring that this process remains really dynamic and responsive to the community's evolving needs. So from an educational perspective, we recognize that local schools are uniquely positioned to engage younger generations, educators, and caregivers. So we believe that school-age children and youth are also active agents of change who has really good and curious thoughts and ideas that can really inform system-level change. And this is the multi-tiered system of support. It is an evidence-based framework that has 3 tiers that intensifies the intervention as the tiers go up. So in summary, our community involvement proposal will incorporate community members into the decision-making and survey process in a strength-based approach.
So moving on to the next component, the mixed methods approach. So this is taken from the current mental health survey. It's written in Japanese, but basically what we're kind of looking at here is how there is this issue of framing within the mental health survey. If you can see in the beginning, they prompt the respondents to talk about radiation, even though during our time in Fukushima, we learned that radiation may not be as much of a concern as it was in 2011 or 2012, shortly following the disaster. The survey instrument is still priming the residents to think about radiation, which may then influence how they respond to this question and the subsequent questions in the instrument.
Okay, and now I'll talk about how we propose to improve the mental health and lifestyle survey by focusing on 2 key goals, reducing the survey burden and making the survey future-proof. First, let's discuss about the survey burden. Over the years, repetitive and radiation or COVID-focused questions could unintentionally sustain anxiety and fatigue among participants. Our goal is to shift the focus to broader mental health concerns while simplifying the survey process. The second is to future-proof the survey. We aim to future-proof the survey by participating to communities where communities are dynamic and their priorities evolve over time. By incorporating flexible themes and open-ended questions, we can ensure the survey adapts to new challenges while maintaining its relevance and impact. Next, future-proofing the survey. To address this, we propose the following strategies. The first is to expand the survey scope to cover broader themes. The second is to supplement existing tools like the SDQ and Key6 scales with free response narratives. And the third is to introduce long-term health topics which resonates with evolving community priorities. Next slide. And this is the examples of the qualitative or open-ended questions. Like, can you describe a recent situation that made you feel particularly stressed or anxious? Next, what changes would help reduce your worry or unease about living in Fukushima? And based on that future-proofing survey, we aim to make a decision-making framework with goals to build confidence in transitioning monitoring systems and to balance the effectiveness of health monitoring with reduced public burden. The steps of decision-making framework first to triangulation, redefine the monitoring, benchmarking for transition, and reduce burden. So we propose to supplement quantitative data with qualitative interviews to contextualize mental health within Fukushima Prefecture. And finally, next. Integrating Fukushima health management survey data into national health systems could significantly strengthen both individual and population-level health monitoring. By linking Fukushima health management survey data with national health databases, we can enhance continuity of care, support preventative measures, and inform evidence-based policies. So we propose to create guidelines to strengthen public health interventions at the municipal level and highlight the importance of the Fukushima health management survey results. And standardizing this data would also facilitate its integration into electronic medical records in order to accelerate Japan's digital healthcare transition. However, achieving this integration requires strong policy commitments to privacy, ethical data use, and accessibility. Additionally, expanding digital platforms and mobile applications could encourage long-term participation by offering interactive tools, real-time feedback, and reminders. These innovations would not only improve engagement, but also optimize data-driven decision-making in public health. But we also recognize that the importance of paper-based survey in the Japanese context, where paper-based outperform this digital platform. So this might be a challenge in the future. Next. So we propose to integrate the Fukushima health management survey results to the e-health data systems in the future and start initiating data standardization process to simplify future integration and use digital platforms to increase responsiveness from various population sectors in Fukushima.
So just to recap, ultimately, our proposals are to future-proof the survey and reduce the burden of the survey. We want to expand the inclusion criteria to get a more comprehensive sense of what is the status of health in Fukushima Prefecture. And to do so, we also want to supplement the mental health quantitative measures with qualitative data analysis. We believe this will help inform the types of mental health problems that people in the prefecture are facing and can lead the prefecture to create more tailored approaches to their public health approaches. And then ultimately integrating it with medical records also just helps the facilitation of a greater public health knowledge base. And then to reduce the burden, we want to involve the community in the survey development so that the questions being asked are those that the community feels most empowered to answer, the questions that they want to be answered, and that they're asked in a way that is respectful of the sensitive situation that some residents of the prefecture may be facing, to also revise the benchmarks of the radiation measurement visibility, to stop priming residents to think about the radiation and to let them voice their concerns in an agnostic way. And then we can use those agnostic responses to understand what the burden is. And finally, incorporating more digital, web-based, and mobile survey tools to keep up with modernization. Thank you all for listening. That was a presentation. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, I think, in the chat. But thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the health monitoring team. And so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function so that we can use that question later in the Q&A session. So next, we will hear from the environmental decontamination team on environmental decontamination and a sustainable future for Fukushima, reconstructing its legacy. The speakers are Mary Kate Kenny and Annalise Huber, Casey Dye. Floor is yours.
Thank you. My apologies, just trying to get the, there we go.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Casey. I'll be starting off the Environmental Decontamination Group. One caveat is that we've been introduced as the Environmental Decontamination Group. However, over the course of our time in Fukushima, we decided to cross out the decontamination and rename ourselves because we did not want to perpetuate the idea of a single story that is often associated with Fukushima as being contaminated. And so with that, this sets the stage for us to reclaim the legacy for Fukushima. Next slide, please. This is our team. 3 of us will be presenting today, Mary Kate, Annalise, and I. And with this, we want to start off with kind of an interactive game that you can work on at yourself. So we have the question here of like following the idea of where's Waldo. We have put a spin on it of where's Akabeko. Akabeko represent Fukushima's strength and resilience and is a legendary cow that is a big part of Fukushima's cultural history. So we want to give you a few seconds to see how many akabekos you can count. Feel free to put this in the chat or just keep it in your head. And we will reveal the number in the next slide. All right. How many did you get? I think I'll give some time. Here we have the answer. There's 11 akabeko seen. And so here we have this idea of akabeko as serving as a metaphor for radiation. Whether or not we notice the akabeko, whether or not you got 11 or 5 or 2, the akabeko or the radiation is present. However, there's so much going on in the big picture, right? People are living their lives in this image. They're going to work, they're having fun, they're playing. And this is the same situation as Fukushima, right? Where there is radiation present and yet people are living their lives. And so radiation and contaminated materials are still present, and yet there are many more stories being told and lived than just radiation. Next. And so that is our thesis of how do you reclaim a legacy. So our group decided to highlight the successes of community organizers and propose reclaiming the legacy of Fukushima in a way that highlights these positive efforts. We want to recognize that our proposal is incomplete. It emphasizes future revitalization rather than explicitly protecting and uplifting the lives that were forever impacted by the triple disaster and the ongoing evacuation mandate, and as such, we aim to incorporate a respect for the past in our strategy and definition of the legacy as we look forward. And so, with a really brief recap of what we learned in our time in Fukushima, before this course, many of us who are not Japanese did not have a strong background on the recovery efforts following the triple disaster. News coverage and details that filter from Japan to the rest of the world is quite limited in the 14 years following the disaster, and many of the top hits all focus on the decontaminated and the contaminated story of Fukushima. However, as you can see here, background radiation levels throughout Fukushima are reflective of what you would expect in other global cities. And so one of the challenges we learned is how to best share these successes, really, of decontamination and the current state. And so with this, one of the other ideas is on food safety. Fukushima Prefecture uses germanium semiconductor detectors to undertake monitoring of agricultural products produced in the prefecture prior to shipment. Last year in Fukushima City alone, 134 inspections were conducted. And so foods grown in Fukushima comply with strict safety requirements, which is a fact that really contradicts a lot of the stories that may be told with misinformation about Fukushima's produce being quote-unquote unsafe.
Thirdly, we'd like to... Oh, sorry,
Next, just want to pass it along to Mary Kate.
So thirdly, we'd like to talk about the issue of water. So in our visit to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, we heard from the workers there on the advanced liquid processing system, also known as ALPS, over at TEPCO. ALPS is capable of bringing radionuclides, excluding tritium, to levels consistent with national water regulations. And the process to decommission is expected to continue for the next 30 to 40 years. It's taken an enormous economic toll in Japan and mirrors the timetable and the difficulties seen after the 3 Mile Island accident in the United States back in 1979. Regardless, it's important to recognize that Japan is implementing technologies and techniques to decontaminate that have never been tried before. So we've been asking ourselves this question a lot after visiting various sites, meeting different people, and that is, how do we reclaim Fukushima's legacy? We were struck by Fukushima's community-driven and community-focused approaches to rebuilding and recovering. So for example, local neighborhood associations and residents came together and drew hand-drawn maps to determine the decontamination order of their towns, using their intimate knowledge of their land to help rebuild. In fact, after this, very few residents chose to evacuate, and the majority stayed back in their communities and helped rebuild it, supported by their own trust in the leadership. In another instance, Yoko Sakurada, a member of the Fukushima Prefectural Assembly, visited various evacuation camps every day during the disaster, meeting with displaced individuals and listening to their concerns and anxieties. She then leveraged her personal and professional connections to meet the needs of the displaced individuals in the camps whenever she could. We also heard from Ms. Ando, who created the NPO Fukushima Dialogue based on her experiences after the triple disaster in the Suetsegi community. Here, community members came together to measure radiation levels in their own yards and created contamination maps that they then would bring back to their personal and professional networks. Community members would then meet to discuss concerns regarding radiation, rebuilding, and recovery, fostering a collective sense of responsibility and agency. Beyond technical solutions, the initiative provided a place for residents to share their fears, their hopes, and underscoring the importance of emotional healing during the recovery processes. So to repeat, how do we reclaim a legacy? Hiratake-san from Mitsubishi Corp encouraged us to think global but act local. But we propose taking this further. What if we think locally, using Fukushima as a case study, and act globally by applying these lessons worldwide? By creating direct connections between local organizers in Fukushima and those from disaster-stricken communities all around the world, we can foster a powerful exchange of knowledge and strategies. As we heard from local organizers throughout Fukushima, we were struck by how many of the challenges seem familiar. Evacuation orders, when to return home, and the immense task of starting over with nothing. We are no stranger to natural disasters in the United States. California, where some of our group members call home, has been hit with wildfires many times, including this past January. The pictures below show traffic caused by evacuation orders both in Fukushima after the triple disaster, and is eerily familiar with a traffic jam on the left-hand side as residents flee wildfires in America. The evacuation centers after the triple disaster are also eerily similar to what we've experienced in other countries. So in the left-hand side, we have an emergency shelter for wildfires earlier this January. And on the right, one of the shelters in Miyagi, Japan, following the triple disaster. We propose a global network connecting local leaders in disaster-stricken communities with those who were involved in Fukushima's recovery. These grassroots organizers, including teachers, members of the communities, and local nonprofit affiliates, will collaborate with Fukushima's community organizers to take on specific roles as advisors. We imagine this to be a collective participatory process that would incorporate both in-person and virtual modalities to bring together communities from around the world. So to identify these community organizers in disaster-affected settings, we'd use a multi-pronged approach, using existing networks such as the Japan International Cooperation Agency, the C40 cities, and find grassroots leaders already engaged in recovery efforts, and as well as trusted leaders through community referrals and an open nomination platform. We could also collaborate with universities like Harvard, research institutions who will help us identify local leaders through their connections.
Next, we'll move into our proposal for how to share the legacy of Fukushima with a more general audience. If you could go to the next one, please, Mary-Kate. Thank you. So to support the revitalization effort and prevent the persistence of a single story outside of the prefecture, we propose promoting the legacy of Fukushima with a wider Japanese or international audience. The decision on whom that is not ours to make, but the general idea here involves collaborating with so-called micro-influencers to promote the existing concept of hope tourism that's already existing in the prefecture. For some additional context, these micro-influencers are online content creators with around 10 to 100,000 followers. They often share videos promoting experiences or products they liked and are well trusted by their viewers. Next, please. So hope tourism is a style of learning that's really unique to Fukushima Prefecture. It emphasizes how complex the disaster was as well as the nuanced and ongoing recovery. The three characteristics of Hope tourism are observing, listening, and thinking. Altogether, these mean that tourists get a really true picture of the region and are able to spread awareness of what they've learned back home. Collaboration with influencers also already exists in the country with the Japan National Tourism Organization and the Reconstruction Agency. The JNTO has lauded its own efforts and described past collaborations as successful and receiving good engagement. The structure we propose would be to subsidize visits by small content creators to areas in Fukushima for experiential educational tourism. We highlight programs already in place through Hope Tourism, such as hiking, yam harvesting, and indigo dyeing. Then influencers would be able to create content based on these experiences and share with their audiences. The method that we are sharing here is inspired by the lectures that we had throughout our time in Fukushima. For example, Mr. Suzuki leads hiking groups through Fukushima's beautiful nature as they measure radiation and learn about the radiation's ongoing effects. On the next slide, if it will work, sometimes it's a little bit tricky. We actually have an example of a video from an influencer who visited Fukushima with some support from the Reconstruction Agency itself. Maybe we can watch just a few seconds of it to kind of get a sense of what our general idea is here with Hope Tourism. So in this video, if you can't hear it, she's basically going through and describing all these really, really beautiful and unique things that are very special about Fukushima itself, and encouraging people to come visit things that are a little bit more off the beaten path in the country. And then on our next slide, and kind of with that idea in mind, we do want to recognize that there is a really dark side of tourism in Japan. Shining a light on any place specifically can really bring some unwelcome feedback from outsiders. It can bring disrespectful tourists, and it also has some associated operational costs. That said, we hope that reclaiming the legacy of Fukushima's resilience in this disaster recovery would not only support the return of life to normal for those who are ready for that, but also recognize that the work is really far from over. By sharing these nuanced experiences and lessons, we would be able to promote understanding, alleviate anxiety, and reduce fear about ongoing risks in public spaces. And then we had a really immense privilege and good fortune to experience, understand, and build solidarity with the stories, people, and landscapes of Fukushima over 3 weeks in January. We want to emphasize also that while much of the physical labor of environmental decontamination has already been accomplished, often by the community members themselves, or has at least been put into motion, there still remains much to do in regard to reclaiming Fukushima's legacy and reputation.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We welcome any questions in the Q&A.
Thank you, environmental team. So finally, the list communication team will present on overcoming stigma, a new narrative for Fukushima on its 15th anniversary. The speakers are Naho Yamana, Aisha. How many of you are here? Alan Wong here.
Oh, yes, we are three.
Oh, and also Jeremy Barger as well, right? Okay, floor is yours. Can you share your screen? And then also for the audience, please use the Q&A function. I already see some questions are already there. Back to Yamane-san.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for inviting us today. Let's begin our presentation. So our title is From Stigma to Strength, Revitalizing Fukushima 15 years later. So you will see some Japanese translation throughout the presentation. And first of all, let us introduce ourselves. Alan.
Hi everyone, my name is Alan. I'm a Master in Design Studies student at the Harvard Graduate School of Design.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Berger, and I'm a master's student and a physician in the environmental and occupational health track for the MPH in residency. And oh, I'm going to get to start my video now. Great. Thank you for sending that over. Appreciate it.
Okay, and my name is Naho Yamane. I am MPH AP student and also working as a resident physician in Japan. And Aisha is Anjure, unfortunately cannot join today's session, but we have 5 teammates. And here's the agenda of our presentation. And let's begin with the key issue. We are focusing on Fukushima stigma, which we call the fourth disaster, following 3 disasters: earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear power plant accident. Also, we visited many places in Fukushima during the field trip, and from every person and every site visit, we gained valuable insight. And for example, when I was in Aizu, a taxi driver said, Aizu is 100 kilometers away from the nuclear power plant, and it's right next to Uonuma in Niigata Prefecture, which is a famous rice production area. And even though our rice is just as good there as theirs, we got them together just because we are in Fukushima. I felt that driver's frustration about reputational damage. We now know Fukushima is a huge prefecture and each region has their own culture. However, people outside of Fukushima don't know that difference. And the stigma is shown in a survey too. Even in 2023, more than 30% of Tokyo residents think that the current radiation exposure will likely or very likely have health impact on the future generation in Fukushima. Also, despite there is no scientific evidence, national survey showed 41.2% of general public think that there will be a genetic effect from radiation exposure. Based on these findings, we started to think about one key question. So how can we dispel the negative perception of Fukushima from people outside of the prefecture? And this is a proposal. Since 2026 will be the 15th anniversary of the disaster, we are proposing a nationwide communication campaign. We want to leverage this milestone to remind people of 2011 disaster and trigger changes in people's perception of Fukushima.
So to ensure that the strategy we're proposing is effective, I'll share some preliminary insights into the audiences that we're targeting with the Stigma to Strength proposal. On the next slide, we see a study that shows how people in Japan have distinct perceptions of radiation stigmas from the March 2011 disasters. And as we see here, some are more literate about dosage and health risks and other factors, while others are less so. On the next slide, to build on these insights, we've sketched out a few personas based on what we heard during our visits. And each of these personas that you see here represents a different audience group. So they have different demographics, different concerns, different lived experiences, and they receive their information in different ways, such as newspapers versus social media. Our primary audience here, we want to target the 2 on the left, represented by Hiroshi and Aiko, who are other people living in Japan outside of Fukushima, whereas we have secondary audiences around people who grew up in Fukushima and who evacuated from Fukushima, as well as foreigners who are visiting or considering to visit Japan. These personas can be further developed, but by considering all of them and more, we can make sure that our communication campaign resonates with everyone that we want it to resonate with. On the next slide, the other factor we want to consider here is anchoring bias. The perception of Fukushima as irradiated, it's hard to change in people's minds because they first heard about Fukushima in the context of radiation, like many people in our class did. Research from Mitsubishi highlights the importance of using multiple confirmation methods and communicating through a variety of channels. But the research also suggests that there are perceptions and stigmas that scientific information itself might not be able to disprove. So to address these things, we need to approach risk communication not just as a scientific problem, but also more broadly as a cultural one. We should tell scientific truths and weave a new story about Fukushima to replace the old. I will proceed to tell you a little bit more about how we propose to do this on the following slides about communication strategy and key messaging. And so our proposal for the 15th anniversary commemorative events will reflect on Fukushima's journey to inspire growth, reshape narratives, and strengthen its connections with the world using health and science, disaster preparedness, and also culture and innovation lenses. We'll propose programs that can help rebuild trust, promote resilience, and address people's misconceptions. In addition to the existing radiation education, we propose a movie screening and storytelling event to share how people in Fukushima have rebuilt their lives. We aim to use framing to change the narrative from triple disasters to resilience, focusing on the courage and strength of people in Fukushima. By telling these personal stories, we hope that people outside Fukushima can connect with Fukushima residents emotionally and see the strength that they have. In addition, art is a powerful way to tell stories and connect people. We propose an art exhibition and cultural events showcasing Fukushima's different cultures and how its people rebuilt their lives so that others will see the community, or will see how the community found hope after the disaster. By framing Fukushima as a place of creativity and strength, we could help change the narrative and leave people with a sense of hope and admiration. Our next program is the Farmers Market with Fukushima Products tasting sessions. Why do we propose tasting events? Well, because trying products for yourself helps to build trust. When people taste Fukushima's fresh and delicious fruits, it's easier to believe that they're safe. For the long-term programs, we propose for the government to serve Fukushima products at official events and to host events in the region. Providing real-life examples from trusted figures can help to rebuild people's trust and change current social norms that Fukushima products are not safe. For example, here's a picture of fruit served in a welcoming event when we visit the mayor. And we can also propose community-inclusive events such as hiking and farm visits, such as this viewpoint that we see from Mount Shinobu, which can provide firsthand experiences to help address misconceptions. Next, we propose to boost promotions of the free visa fee program for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is a great step to attract more tourists as it makes it easier for them to travel. However, not many people know about this information. We also want to propose an effort to make people's return or migration process to Fukushima easier and to help them rebuild with their communities. And so we propose to organize regular gatherings to build people, to bring people together and rebuild social bonds. Last but not least, we want to inform people that Fukushima is not just recovering, it's creating a safer and stronger future. After our efforts to eliminate the stigma, we want to make a new narrative for Fukushima as a place with rich cultural background and a place for innovation. We want to emphasize the safety and preparedness for disasters in the future and how Fukushima is becoming a hub for new industries like renewable energy, advanced manufacturing, and technology. In summary, our 15th anniversary event is a celebration of resilience and strength. We want people to experience the beautiful moments that we had in Fukushima through direct experiences, storytelling, and education. For the next part of the presentation, I'll hand it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Naho. Thank you, Alan. So to dispel the stigma of Fukushima, we really wanted to take a look at the stakeholders. And we had the privilege during our time and the honor of speaking with grassroots leaders, community organizers, local business owners, and families who have played a vital role in Fukushima's recovery. Their dedication goes beyond rebuilding the structures. It's about restoring the livelihoods, preserving traditions, and ensuring that no one is left behind. And to do so, we looked at different stakeholders throughout the community that I just talked about, and we used tools such as the ones that Dr. Reich had provided to identify stakeholders. And you can see here a variety of the stakeholders pictured there of people we actually met as well along our way. If we move to the next slide, you can see we made maps using some traditional stakeholder mapping models, but really what we were trying to do is identify who could speak and honor the rebuilding effort for this 15th commemorative event. And you can see the Kabeko there as well. And really the idea is for the people of Fukushima's voices, the stakeholders, the organizers, the grassroots leaders, the community leaders, to be able to engage and collaborate and mobilize and represent how they've rebuilt over the past 15 years and share that vision with the rest of Japan and the rest of the world. If you could go to the next slide. During our time there, we were able to stay with Fukushima residents and have home visits. And one that really struck me was my host family, and this is Satoshi Hashimoto, and he made me a delicious breakfast, all with locally grown organic foods from Fukushima. And I know that as an individual, if my host family felt safe eating the foods. I certainly did, and they were delicious, and he's a wonderful cook. And so not only does he highly recommend them to everyone, but so do I. And it's all about building that trust. And we want to communicate that trust from the people of Fukushima to the rest of Japan and beyond. And if you could go to the next slide. You can see that there were other efforts as well. Amir Sensei has been working on the Guguru project. And one of the things that really struck us was what you see here highlighted in yellow was that perception of the rest of Japan outside of the Fukushima prefecture was that there are genetic effects that 40% of that population believes that the radiation exposure had led to genetic effects, which wasn't true as we saw through the Fukushima National Health Survey. And so the goal is to really reduce that to 20% by the end of 2025, which is just in time for the commemorative event. And so if you can move to the next slide, please. This is just a sampling of some of the local stakeholders that we were touched and humbly met during our 3 weeks, such a short time, but such an impactful time for us. And so we were at several hospitals, Takeda Hospital in Aizu as well, many universities. We saw the Tech Center, AIS Japan, that Mitsubishi introduced us to, where we saw innovation and social systems in action. And also the Planetary Health, where we met a lot of local artisans and business owners, growers of local Aizu honey, which was delicious. And so trying to popularize these products, have the people show their value to the rest of, and change that negative stigma. This is all part of that process that we would recommend and advocate for as part of honoring the 15th commemoration event. And with that concludes my slides. We can move to the next section.
Okay, so now moving on to the monitoring and evaluation part. So monitoring and evaluation are essential components of any large-scale communication campaign, and they ensure that activities align with intended objectives and enable mid-course adjustment and provide evidence of impact to stakeholders. Here's the key metrics aligned with our campaign goals using a logical framework approach. We track 5 components from inputs to long-term impacts. As for input, we would like to check financial and human resources, and in the second process, such as event participation and digital engagement. And third, output includes reach and audience engagement. And outcome, as we mentioned before, we have 3 lenses: so health science, disaster preparedness, and cultural lenses. And long-term impacts and stigma reduction, economic indicators, public trust, and policy influence. In this slide, you can see our scientific evaluation will be implemented across 3 phases: pre-campaign, during campaign, and post-campaign. And on the right-hand side, these are evaluation methods we can implement at each stage as appropriate. We can combine different methods using qualitative and quantitative methods, and also big data method. So final slide, lastly, the future vision and outcomes we expect. Short-term outcome includes improved mental health and community integration, continuation of customs and traditions, and also tourist growth and increase in returnees to Fukushima. Midterm, we anticipate industry growth and healthcare improvements for aging population and innovative talent pools and social innovation. And long-term, our goal is for resident evacuees to live healthy, fulfilling lives in a sustainable environment on planet Earth.
So to help conclude, I want to tell a story about the 15th anniversary celebration from the perspective of an evacuee returning to their home. So I'll read through the English quickly, but the Japanese translation is also available on the slide. So you wake up to the bright sun coming in through your window, you check your phone, the date is March 11th, 2026, a very important day. The truck is waiting for you outside. All your belongings are in it, including the heirlooms you brought with you during the evacuations 15 years ago. But before you move back into your old home, you visit downtown Fukushima City, where red banners, balloons, and Akabeko statues adorn the streets. Cherry blossoms are blooming, paving the streets in pink carpets. Local vendors sell fruit and kintsugi in the plaza, where a large crowd has gathered. The mayor takes the podium and tells Fukushima's story. They highlight the heroic efforts of first responders and residents who have worked tirelessly over the past 15 years to build back better from the disaster. But the festivities don't linger too long on the disaster. There are performances of traditional songs and dances, and there are futuristic prototypes on display of renewable energy, medical devices, and driverless vehicles. After film screening, you fill out a survey that asks you about the 15th anniversary event and how it changed your perception of the stigma. Looking around, you see cameras everywhere in Tokyo, Hokkaido, and all across Japan. The event is being live streamed for the whole country to view. After a long day, you arrive at your old house in Hamadori region, where you, your parents, and your grandparents were all born. Your children rush inside to see it for the first time. And so the akabeko, the traditional toy that symbolizes the story of Fukushima's recovery after a smallpox epidemic many centuries ago. Through a forward-looking vision that builds on stakeholder friendships and innovative cultural narratives, we hope that Fukushima can tell a new story about itself and live up to the meaning of its name, the Island of Good Fortune. Thank you to all the people who met with us and who took the time to prepare lectures, tours, and other experiences to share their insights and thoughts with us. And thank you for listening to our presentation.
Thank you very much. Good kind of suggestion, proposal. So thank you very much, this communication team. Now we will move into the panel discussion, Q&A session. So those who speak for the presentation, please come back, turn on your video camera on, and I will serve as a kind of moderator. And we already have 27 questions. Some question is already answered by the speakers, but I will pick up the one the most having a like button. It's going to be randomly kind of. I'm picking up with the one having most of the like button. But if you answer the question, that will automatically move into the already answered. So please make sure. I will pick up the right question, and allow me. I'm going to lead it down. The first question got the 3 kind of like button questions for the second group, specifically. Nothing against hope tourism. You are also lightly pointed out the downside of the tourism. In this context, did you ask how Asian community leaders maintain their motivation to convey their message? And if they felt as though their message was being collectively interpreted, were there also people who still found it difficult to talk about their experience, where you also be able to investigate what the local communities thought could be done about the contaminated soil bundles being temporarily kept in Fukushima nuclear power plant? Vicente. So I think Casey already trying to kind of reply on this question, but if those who are on the team wants to reflect or answer the question.
Yeah, I can jump in. I'll just say what I was going to type. But thank you, Kaneda-san, for your thoughtful questions. I will answer part 1, and then my colleague Mary Kate will answer part 2. Reflecting upon this, we had our really wonderful privilege of hearing from Ms. Satsuki Katsumi, who was a retired primary school principal in Fukushima, who spearheaded her school's decontamination process. So she really organized everything from scratch. And she herself is an older woman. She's retired, and yet she herself was still full of a lot of passion and very eager to share with us her stories and lessons in the recovery process. So as such, we cannot personally speak for if she feels like her message received properly, but we as her audience felt like we were able to engage with her very successfully in an intergenerational series of conversations. And so we're very grateful for the older community members for their energy and their efforts to still educate and communicate with younger generations who may have not lived through the disaster or do not remember it clearly. Mary Kate?
Thanks, Casey. To address the second part of the question concerning the contaminated soil bundles, regrettably, the soils, we didn't get to chat too much about those specifically. again, there is quite a bit interesting overlap between the dilemma of what to do with the contaminated soils and in Fukushima, but also what to do with contaminated debris from the 3 Mile Island accident in the United States back in 1979. The United States still has not figured out what to do with those contaminated debris, so that we have quite a bit in common between these our two countries. But I think I can speak for everyone in my group that we'd be delighted to come back and and try and tackle that issue.
Okay, thank you. I'm just checking the questions already answered, but to kind of connecting with what Mary just said, there was a question. I think this is for the last group. Have any of your event proposals already been discussed with the local people? Already Goto-sensei responded to the question, but if any of the member presented for the last group can also elaborate a little bit.
I think I can add some comments. I think Aya-sensei knows that, but one of my teammates, Aisha, is going to come back to Fukushima and do the whole project for the PhD group, but also for this proposal for Fukushima. That's what I know.
Yes, another one
Okay.
is Nihao. So that's about health monitoring.
Okay. So and next question. This is already answered by Annalise, but I want to kind of highlight again. So if you were to come back again, what community activities or interventions would you like to offer to the public? Probably, Annalise, you already kind of responded, but you can again share, and if other members have any additional comments, would be kind of open.
Yeah, so what I had said in the chat wasn't necessarily an intervention. I think it more falls into like a community activity. I think in a class setting like this, we all agreed that we would have really loved more engagement with community. Professor Goto set up a lot of time for us to talk to community stakeholders, which we really appreciated. But I think even more of that or more input on our proposals would have been really welcome. On a personal note, when I do go back with my family or friends, I would love to engage with the community more, especially in kind of the activities that we had talked about in Hope Tourism. So the hiking things with radiation dosimeters or the farming and planting things to see where all the fruit came from that we loved so much.
Anyone adding some comments here? If not, I'm moving to next one. So Mika-san posted another question. Questions for the first group. The first goal was interesting. Did you find that the potential surveyees were tired of being asked questions by researchers? What informed the selection of the goal 1?
I can start, and then Chelsea or Richard, if you want to add on to anything. But yeah, I think in our conversations with community members, researchers, and just general like interactions with Fukushima, there seemed to be this tension between wanting to like move past like radiation, like both on the researcher side and the respondents. Sorry, especially among the like younger generations. Like I think a lot of younger people in Fukushima like are starting to think about this as a thing in the past. So they're kind of not like apathetic towards the questioning, but I think it doesn't have the same saliency for newer generations as it did back in 2011. So I think across the different domains of researchers and like researchees or participants, it seemed like there was this motivation to move past radiation, which is why we want to also incorporate the community involvement, because instead of us, not necessarily us, but like those managing the survey, instead of them dictating what the next course of research is, we thought it'd be best to actually listen to the community, see what issues they think are salient, and have that inform how we pivot past it's past 10, almost 14 years now.
Then thank you. I will pick up. I think this is for the group 2. What was the most surprising things you learned about mental health in Fukushima? Probably some part is already answered, but if group 2 has additional comments on the question.
I think that might have been for group 1.
This is for the group 1. Oh, apology. Yeah, this is for the group 1. Yeah.
I guess surprising is kind of hard to pin down. Maybe this may not be like directly related to mental health, but I think it is in some ways. I think a common thing, surprisingly common thing we heard from multiple people was that there was stigma from other people in Japan, even when like thinking about marrying somebody from Fukushima. Like the idea that if they were to marry a Fukushima resident, then like maybe their future children might have some kind of issue because one of their parents is from Fukushima, was exposed to radiation. So I personally found that like stigma to be really surprising. And I guess like anecdotally even, some of my friends who were born and raised in Tokyo, like living just a few hours south of Fukushima, were like surprised to hear that I was going to visit. So I think that like to both the other groups' points as well, like the stigma around Fukushima is still very strong, and I think that has very far-reaching effects on mental health. It's not necessarily just anxiety about radiation, but it's kind of like anxiety about anxiety that comes from radiation. It's kind of one removed from the actual issue.
Thank you. So if those of who wants to respond on the questions, please feel free to kind of jumping in as well. And I'm moving to one of the question was the name, the Kawai-san's question. What changed the most in you through 3 weeks stay in Fukushima? I think this is very kind of broad question, but those who wants to share how the 3 weeks impacted on your life or experience. Someone wants to share?
I'll
Mary?
go first. Yeah, sure. I can't speak for everyone in this group. And again, there are even more students who couldn't make it this evening. But I think it's safe to say that all of us were tremendously and positively impacted by our visit. I know for me, it was a life-changing experience in terms of being able to, again, meet with survivors, meet with this warm, resilient, funny, like in all the wonderful communities from all the areas of Fukushima. I mean, those of us who participated in the homestay, I think I was laughing with the high school kids for the entire night I was over there. And when it's easy to get caught up, especially when you're reading news articles or scientific journals thousands of miles away, it's hard to remember who's on the other end of these experiences. And this, I think, was a very important lesson for all of us in the public health world and beyond, to remember who's on the other side of the paper.
Thank you. So slightly related questions. I think Alan already responded. There was a question. What is 3 key message you want people to remember about Fukushima? Alan, you already wrote down, but could you share what you're thinking, and also if other people has also comments on this question?
Yeah, does anyone in my group want to just take that on? I think briefly, I think the core of our proposal, we want to replace that sort of the stigmatized perception of Fukushima as being a place where the radiation is dangerous, and furthermore that people who came from Fukushima or who have some kind of connection to Fukushima are by extension irradiated and pose health risks as well. And these are things that came up frequently in the research that we did, as well as in the conversations that we had with stakeholders. And so we hope to propose a few additional or a few narratives to replace that kind of concept, that kind of stigma, particularly around a brighter future towards innovation, technological innovation, towards a lot of the natural beauty, the cultural heritage, the fruit, the onsens, the sake that Fukushima has won awards for, and really try to, I guess, expand the thinking and sort of what comes to mind and what's associated in people's minds when they think about Fukushima. So it's not just a radiation as the one sole narrative that is dominating perception. But does anyone else in the group want to jump in on that?
I think just to echo what Alan said, it was a very powerful changing moment, and the messages of both the past and the future are intertwined. That home visit that Mary Kate talked about was really impactful for me, and I'm grateful for Aya Sensei and the community leaders for setting that up. Satoshi and his wife Hitomi, they're artisans, and so they both created traditional pottery and took me back to their pottery wheel in the back and showed me a lot of the traditional Japanese arts that they learned from their senseis and their masters. And so being able to highlight how tradition is still being carried forward, as well as looking forward to things like medical innovation, some of the centers of growth and industry to try to bring back more economic growth to the area, because as one of the comments accurately mentioned, that Japan is leading the way. It's an aging society where the rest of the world will be catching up. And how do you foster that young growth and economic drivers? And you do that by highlighting both the past, but also the new talent and bringing some industry there. And so those are the types of messages to show that both exist in Fukushima now, and to broadcast that to the rest of the country so they can have new memories, new images, new thoughts about Fukushima and the prefecture to replace the old. And that's the whole concept about building back better, is to make it even, to change the narrative, reframe it, give it agency, and really make it people-driven, stakeholder-driven, and community and organizer-led. And those are all the people that we were introduced to by Aya Sensei through her wonderful stewardship. So we're very grateful for that experience, and we want to be able to help continue to spread that message.
Right. So we have 3 minutes left, and probably if you, I think since you're here, if you have any kind of last message that you want to share with the audience, I would like to use the 3 minutes for your last message, Richard.
Yeah, I think like this is something that I found overlooked in Fukushima. It is more about like how the community or the population there recover from this kind of like trauma. So I felt like at the time like we rarely speak about like how this society like processing the trauma, and also like processing like their grief toward like multiple disaster they had experienced before. So I found it very interesting. We had these planetary meetings, and we talk about like more into cultural preservation and how the spiritual healing and things like that, which I found like very interesting, because I came from a background of very technical. And recently, even like in the humanitarian settings, we've been talking a lot about like how to recover the society, not only like from the hard point of view, like, but also like from the soft how people as a community process their grievances through arts, through like economic stimulation, and through psychological support. So like I think it is also something that we shouldn't overlook. I know that from the funding and like project perspectives, it is very challenging to meet these needs, but I want to share the last point like that I observed in Fukushima that I think very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Maybe 1 or 2 more? If not, I can moving on to closing remarks. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for the all audience posted questions, and all the panelists shared your experience. So now to close the seminar, I would like to invite Professor Michael Leish, Professor Emeritus of the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, to share his closing remarks. Professor Leish.
please.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to offer a few comments at the end of this wonderful seminar. First of all, congratulations to the students on your excellent work and on the wonderful presentations. They actually, I think, captured some of the core issues, some of the core lessons, and some of the core complexities of Fukushima. I'd also like to thank, of course, the sponsor, HGPI, and Professor Goto Sensei for her wonderful leadership of this course. Let me offer 3 comments, and I have, I think, 3 or 4 minutes. So one of the things that the students engaged in was to seek out the answers to the question, what is Fukushima? And ironically, of course, as one of the slides, the last slide showed, literally the meaning of the word is island of good fortune that went through this awful process of disasters. The 3 groups used multiple methods, multiple approaches to try to, and multiple public health perspectives to go after this question of what is Fukushima and what has it gone through. Each group went through a process of discovery, of study, reflection, debate, and then finally coming up with some core messages. And they engaged with the community in Fukushima in different ways. They brought their skills and knowledge from public health to Fukushima with open minds. What did they learn? Well, they came to conclusions, I think, that they didn't expect they would come to. You know, they learned Fukushima is not just the disaster, and that actually what needs to be done is a process of recovery and going beyond the disaster. People are living their lives, as one of the groups said. The prefecture is large. Some parts of the prefecture were never even touched by the disaster environmentally, but feel the effects emotionally and in their own communities. That's the first lesson. The second, they learned that engaging with the community actually changes your understanding of what happened and what is happening now. And you cannot rebuild after a complex disaster without engaging with the community. They sought to bridge the gap between their own scientific studies, scientific concepts, and community lives, coming up with that wonderful phrase, from stigma to strength. Of course, they also recognized, even though they didn't say so, that this is not a simple process. The process of reversing stigma, removing stigma, and moving beyond stigma, both within Japan as well as the United States, as well as in any country, is very complicated. They also discovered, engaging with the community and with local experts, that the radiation levels in Fukushima are actually, in Fukushima City, are actually not high and lower than some major cities around the world. They learned that foods grown in Fukushima comply with safety regulations and actually are remarkably tasty. Organic foods, organic honey, wonderful food. Yeah, in many ways, engaging with the community turned these students into ambassadors for the new Fukushima, advocates for hope tourism, proponents for a 15-year anniversary that would try to overcome the images both within Japan and outside Japan to try to change perceptions of what Fukushima is and what Fukushima has gone through and what the students learned. Third lesson. They learned that this process about learning about disasters in communities actually has broader lessons. It's other countries, other disaster experiences can learn from the Fukushima experiences in the same way that these 15 graduate students from Harvard learned from their 3 weeks in Fukushima. that the recovery process and rebuilding social trust is complicated, challenging, but it can be done. Disasters happen all around the world. They come in various shapes and forms, but there are lessons that can be learned about community recovery from what Fukushima has gone through with that lovely phrase, think local, but act global. So, and that this process is both connected to the past because you can't forget the past, both the long ago past as well as the recent past, but it has to be a process of moving forward, using stories to shape perceptions and to create narratives that can inspire people for moving forward and dealing with the next set of disasters that happen. Thank you for this opportunity to make some comments, and I turn it over to Professor Goto.
Goto-sensei, floor is yours, and also for all instructors who are here in the Zoom, please turn on your video camera. Goto-sensei.
Great. So it's very lovely to see all the instructors' faces. We instructed together, we worked together with the students. And I was very amazed by the learning curve of students that your presentation improved from the final presentation to this one greatly. And then the other thing that I thought was this course itself is being like an academic hope tour. And this is what I have been discussing with the teaching fellow, Dr. Riho Isaji, after the course. So I think we will keep thinking for the next year how the course means not only to the students, but also in the local community. We were struck by the wide coverage of the local media coverage of the local newspapers this time. But I think that we should not only be happy about it, but we need to think what our visit meant in the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Like and Professor Goto-sensei. This concludes the HGPI seminar. Thank you very much for all audience and speakers who joined today's session. As mentioned earlier, the recording of today's session will be made available soon, and we will inform you via our newsletter or emails for those who registered with the emails. So thank you once again, and hope those who are living in the US have a lovely end of the week, and for those who are living in Japan, have a start of the nice Saturday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.